Blog Talk Radio.
We are the You Are Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the You Are Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's You Are Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and today we are going to be tackling, goodness, my mouth's not working yet today. We are going to be tackling the topic of cheating in junior tennis, and it's a topic that has been hotly discussed on the Parenting Aces Facebook page, on Twitter, on the Parenting Aces website, on various other forums that I participate in, and so I figured it's time to devote an entire show to this subject and hear from you guys what you think needs to be done to put a stop to what some perceive as a really big problem in our sport. So I'm looking very forward to talking with our guest today. She is the mom who inspired me to start Parenting Aces. She had the Tennis Mom website long before Parenting Aces was around, and I used to pepper her with questions on a regular basis, and she was very sweet and very patient with me, and so I'm really looking forward to having her on today. But before I bring today's guest on the air, I do want to play a quick commercial. When we come back, we will be on the air with Nicole Lascelle, who will be talking with us about cheating in junior tennis.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive, stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's You Are Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have a really interesting topic of conversation today, cheating in junior tennis. Before I bring our guest, Nicole, on the air, however, I want to just let y'all know that I will not be broadcasting the show next Tuesday. I will actually be en route out to Indian Wells during our normal airtime. And there's a possibility that I will be broadcasting later in the week from Indian Wells, but that's still kind of up in the air at this point. So please stay tuned to our Facebook and Twitter feeds for updates on that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. So, okay, now let me bring Nicole Lascelle on the air with us. Nicole is calling in from Canada. Her daughter is a very high-level competitive junior. She has an older daughter who is not a tennis player, but Nicole's husband is a coach and a very high-level coach at that. So Nicole knows what she's talking about. She's living the life. And Nicole, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Lisa, for having me.
So you commented on the Parenting Aces Facebook page that you really wanted to address this topic of cheating in junior tennis. And I didn't push the issue with you there, but I'm curious, has something recently happened with your daughter that prompted you to want to have this conversation in a public forum?
Absolutely. We in Quebec right now, we're in Montreal, and we're just coming off the period where our juniors are playing a series of tournaments that culminate in the Quebec Junior Championships, the Junior U16, U14, U18 Championships. Top 6 players out of those tournaments go to the Canadian Nationals. So we've just come off those series of tournaments. My daughter is 16. She's in her last year of playing U16, also plays the U18s. And, I started to see things at the tournament that I thought that we had gotten past, in some of the younger levels of her play. Particularly, I noticed, line calls. I just want to address the fact that I absolutely understand that tennis is a very, very fast sport, and it's often very difficult for, a child who's on the move to catch a line call. Errors are going to happen. But when, you see it consistently and repeatedly from certain players, or you see tactics of score changing, which we'll get into a little bit later, I just got incredibly frustrated, and I thought, I've seen parents talk about this. I've read lots of posts, both on my former blog and on yours, parents who are frustrated with it, and I think it's time that we had a good discussion about it.
Well, so we all understand that the line calling issue is very difficult, and one of my favorite kind of exchanges was with Coach Bill Patton explaining to me why he thinks a very low percentage of bad line calls are intentional. And he talks about just what you said, that, tennis is fast and it's very difficult to call a line when you're on the run, and a lot of times it's wishful thinking as opposed to intentional bad line calling. And so just to be clear, our discussion today isn't focused really that much around the line calls as much as kind of a pervading attitude of, I'm going to win this match no matter what it takes, whether that means I'm going to change the score and argue that I'm doing it correctly, or I'm going to use gamesmanship to my advantage, pushing the limits of what's allowed, etc., right?
Exactly, and I think that that's what we really need to address is what propels or what, incites a player to suddenly at usually very, very critical points in a match, match point, add in, add out, a game point, to suddenly start using tactics, which I will call either delay or confused tactics to break the momentum of a match. Case in point, I watched my daughter quite clearly. We were all counting the score, lead 40-30. Next point, she hit. It was in. It was clearly in. It wasn't a question of whether or not the call was in or out. And yet her opponent started to argue that the score was now deuce as opposed to game. We're seeing this. I don't know if you're seeing it in the U.S. as much as, we're seeing it up here, but I have an idea that it is pervasive, and it is, across junior tennis, probably worldwide. We get into these situations, or a player gets into these situations where they're make or break, and, at 16, 17, many of our players want to go on to play college. Some want to go already onto the pro circuit. When we get into this whole idea of, switching scores or using different tactics to delay and break momentum, I think that we have a big problem, and we need to look at it. So, a player goes and gets an umpire, asks, say, I want you on the court for the next few balls, and the cheating tactic doesn't reoccur. But if a player goes into a match against certain players and knows that those certain players habitually use tactics to cheat, it becomes a very, very difficult thing as a parent to sit and watch and not be able to intervene, and to want to continue, keep your child in the game and say it's okay, it will be better when you get to X, Y, Z level of your tennis career.
Right, and I think I've talked about this before, but when I've seen it happen either in my son's matches or other matches at tournaments that he's playing in, a lot of times what ends up happening, sadly, and I'm laughing just because it's such a frustrating situation, is the child being cheated ends up getting pushed to a point where they can no longer control themselves, and they end up saying something or doing something that is a clear violation of the rules, get coded and even defaulted from the match, and the cheater is left to go on to play the next round. And when I broached that topic with our head of junior comp in our section of USTA, his response was, well, that's a good lesson for that player to learn how to control themselves. Cheating happens in the world. And, my reaction is, wait a minute, but what lesson is the cheater learning? The cheater's learning that they can continue to cheat and nothing's going to happen, and they're going to continue to move on and quote, win by using, illegal or unethical tactics. So is it the role of the governing body to put a stop to that, or is the onus on us as parents and our kids' coaches to teach them how to win despite being cheated?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a combination of both. I think that we all, many of us are fans of other sports, and we all know that tennis is unique in the fact that the players call their own balls, their own in and outs, and not whatnot. Whereas, at junior hockey, junior football, basketball, there is a process for bringing, referees up the ladder. And would a junior hockey game, for example, would be refereed here in Canada by a younger, up-and-coming referee, usually someone about the same age as the players on the ice. Here in tennis, as we know, there is a code of ethics, a code of behavior that our children are supposed to adhere to. And when we demand them to excel and to be the best that they can be and to win, and everything comes down to, winning and losing in tennis. It's, unfortunately at a certain level, it's not the development, it's whether or not you are ranked 1, 2, 3 or 100, 150 or 200. And I think that one of the things that we need to take a look at as parents is it time, and tennis has been going on for a long time, is it time for us as parents to ask that there be some type of referee development system in place so that there are more roving umpires on the tennis courts, or B, that it is a constant. There is an umpire, a younger, developing junior umpire on the court that is watching for those particular instances. My feeling is, because I grew up here in Canada and hockey is huge, my whole life I have seen 15, 16, 17-year-old referees on the ice refereeing their peers and making those calls. I think it's time for us to take a serious look at, can we not have some type of development system for referees and stop the opportunities for cheating in tennis.
And it's a great suggestion. And, I've seen that suggestion put out for discussion before. And I'll tell you, one of the responses that I've heard is, well, then how do you stop a kid who is refereeing a court from showing favoritism? For, if you have kids playing in the same event or competing in the same section, how do you stop the referee from putting a player that is a direct competitor of their own at a disadvantage? And I don't know the answer to that.
I guess my suggestion would be that the referees not be other competitive junior players here in hockey, and I'll use that example because it's one that I know best. The referees are not hockey players. They are coming up the ladder because their desire is to be ultimately NHL referees. So, you have a senior, you have a tournament umpire that's a referee that's, dedicated to a particular tournament. They offer the oversight for these younger referees, but I really don't believe that junior players should be refereeing, their direct peers that they are going to be competing against. If perhaps not at this tournament, at another tournament in the future, and showing that bias. The other thing too, Lisa, is, as you know, PlaySight has come out with quite an interesting concept of recording, the tennis court and having video playback, etc. I think, when I think about that, it's an amazing system, but I also think that it would probably take an awful lot of time, and I've read enough on your blog about how tennis matches apparently take too long for the college level, but, PlaySight might be an opportunity where a match is recorded and very disputed calls or scores could be played back to see what actually happened on the court. All I know from my own personal feeling is that as a parent sitting there watching these matches and seeing this happen, I taught my daughter very early on, unless you're seeing big patches of green, blue, clay between the line and the ball, it's probably, it's a good chance it was in, and call the score out loud. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but often at, the U16s, U18s, I don't know if they're just too cool for school, but they're not calling the score out loud point by point. And I think that often causes some of the confusion, especially when you're in the heat of, very long points. Did we start at 30-30? Was it 15-30? Not knowing the score, but I think the teenagers have the responsibility for calling the score out loud and doing their part to make sure that there is no confusion when we get to this point. Well, was it deuce or was it add out or add in for me? Those would be my first suggestions anyway.
Great suggestions. Let me just remind my listeners, if you'd like to call in and join the conversation, our number is 714-583-6853. Again, 714-583-6853. We do have a caller on the line, Nicole, so I'm going to bring them on. It is a caller from 901-550. Caller, are you there? Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, who's on the air with us?
My name's Brett, and my brother over here's name is
Nathan.
Hi, Brett and Nathan. You guys with the Stopping the Cheating website?
Yeah, the PAC. It stands for Players Against Cheating.
Right, awesome. So some of my listeners may not be aware of what you guys are starting, so why don't you give us a quick description of what Players Against Cheating is all about and how you came to start it.
Okay. The Players Against Cheating, we created it to help every kid out there have a fair and honest game to play and make tennis ultimately a better sport. I'll let my brother give you a few more details on that.
And also we have a pack pledge, which is, I will honor the pack, I will not win by cheating, I will play hard, but I will play honestly. Win or lose, I will honor myself, my opponent, and my sport by upholding the rules. When I am certain that cheating is taking place, I will work hard to bring the player to the pack and giving them the same chance I've been given to improve in all aspects of life.
That's awesome. So what kind of support are you guys getting so far? Are you hearing from a lot of players and parents and even coaches?
Oh, I didn't answer the question. Sorry, what did you say again? I didn't hear that.
No problem. What kind of support are you guys getting for your movement so far? Are you hearing from a lot of different players and parents and coaches?
Well, yeah, so far in our area, we really are. We've already got 10 other people that have actually signed up for it so far, and we've literally just put this out there. So it's catching on pretty quickly.
That's fantastic.
And we are creating a website where all the people who join can talk to each other about their matches and how they did in there. And pretty much just have fun talking to each other about what they did in the match and how they would like to improve.
That's great. Okay, so how can my listeners find your website? What's that address?
The address is playersagainstcheating.com.
Playersagainstcheating.com. Great. And I'm going to put a link to that on the Parenting Aces website as well. You guys also have a Facebook page, is that right?
Yes. I'm not sure what that is, though.
Well, we can add a link to that too. I can look it up. I'm sure I'm part of that page already because I connected with your dad, and so I'll definitely make sure that I add that link. Well, guys, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about what you're hoping to accomplish with your new site?
We're hoping to accomplish to have for everyone and every match to be an honest and fair match.
I think that's a great goal. I think everybody that plays or watches tennis would agree that should be everybody's goal. Nicole, are you still on? Your thoughts
I'm still here.
Doing.
I think that it's absolutely outstanding, and I think that that's really important. The first line in this battle that we have is, as parents, what we are telling our children about the matches that they're playing, and for these two to be doing, to create this site. I just went on it while they were talking, Players Against Cheating. It's a great initiative because if the players are telling each other, what we're seeing out there is not acceptable, and as players we have to make sure that we, either put pressure on those who are repeat offenders in this, or that we just want to go out there and play a nice, clean match, want to make sure that everybody else does. For them to be taking the initiative, I think it's huge.
Well, boys, congratulations. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I'm going to encourage everybody listening to the show to please check out the website and share it with your children, share it with your children's coach, and let's help spread the word on this, that there is a growing group of players who are not just committed to playing fair tennis, but ensuring that everybody who steps on the court plays fair tennis.
Right.
Guys, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
There's one other thing.
Okay.
Like she said earlier, we put pressure on those that cheat. We use peer pressure to try and ultimately convert them from cheating to playing honest and making tennis a funner sport for all those that play. And giving the kids in America and everywhere else a chance to actually develop, not be cheated, so they get more chances to play matches, play more points, and actually see what it would be like in the real world.
That's great. I love that. I love that you're turning something that usually has a negative meaning, peer pressure, into something very positive. And I again applaud your efforts, and I wish you guys all the success, and I hope that you'll keep me informed as to how things are going with the website and how Parenting Aces can work with y'all to promote what you're doing and getting rid of all the gamesmanship, all the cheating that's going on in tennis. So congratulations, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, Nicole, let me get back to you, and let's talk solutions. You put out there about PlaySite, and I think that's a great idea, and I know I've heard from parents from time to time who've suggested, if we just videotape all these matches, and then the videotape could be sent to the governing body, and, we'd have proof of what's going on out there, then the kids that are the ones making the bad calls or using gamesmanship in a negative manner could be dealt with. And then there are others who say, well, that's never going to happen. So I'm as frustrated as you are. We're at the end of this junior tennis thing in our house, but I suspect there will be some continuity of this in the college tennis ranks as well, sadly. We certainly see it at the professional level. I mean, there was a huge controversy at the Australian Open last year with Victoria Azarenka and Sloane Stephens Victoria Azarenka using a medical timeout at a very convenient time in the match for herself, and I'm not sure what the answer is here.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and that certainly does happen at the pro level too, as you said. There can be medical timeouts or bathroom breaks or certain things when there's a certain momentum directed into a match. But and I don't know that the answer is that we can ever stop that. But I think that we have an obligation as tennis parents to raise our children and raise our young competitive junior players to always do their best to be honest in their match. There is so much pressure to be ranked high enough to get to whatever particular tournament, event, college that you want to go to. And that's important. I think that I'm all for competition. I'm all for pressure. I'm all for teaching our kids to get working very, very hard to get where they want to go. But I think that we have to be really clear as we're bringing them up in the 8 and under, 10 and under, et cetera, that when in doubt, there's a good chance the ball was in. Unless you've seen huge amounts of that color of that cord around you. Good chance that is in, and that cheating is never okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to call a ball out that was in. It's going to happen all the time. It's something that we need to learn, but we need to teach them that in crunch moments, in key points, like I said before, it is always a critical game moment when gamesmanship happens, right? And it's a psychological tactic. I'd like to teach my daughter that that's not an option. To delay, to stall, or to switch the score, to all of a sudden use a bathroom break or a medical timeout to change the momentum in a match. Now, is that part of the game? I'm sure that there are people out there that are listening to you today say, hey, that's part of tennis. It's a psychological game as much as it's a physical game, and if you're smart enough, quick enough, able enough to switch the momentum in your favor, well, good for you. I'm not of that philosophy. I think it's really important to the integrity of the game that we do everything that we can to eliminate that type of thing. So my suggestions would be, 1, start early. Teach your kids really early that you can't go there. You cannot start trying to win matches or winning games in a match by using any kind of cheating tactic. 2, coaches, I think, have their role in it to have their players teach their players that an honest match won feels a lot better than a match you won and that you're going to go home with at the end of the day, with a little pit in your stomach going, well, maybe I didn't make that call, or maybe I was intentionally doing X, Y, or Z to switch scores or to stall the match. So I think, coaches have a role, but I think the players have a role themselves into helping each other, calling each other on different calls. I've seen pretty heated discussions on the tennis court as recently as 3 weeks ago when my daughter finally, she was not one who was good at standing up for herself when somebody played games with her, finally stand up and ask for the referee and argue the call. But at the end of the day, the rules applied, and if the referee didn't see the games, it has to go back to the last score that was remembered by both players. The player who is acting in that particular way always has the advantage. The player who changes the score always has the advantage, and that's a problem for me. So what do I think we can do? 1, let's train some young referees that are not players, have them either as roving or permanent referees on the court, or find ways to use the video that you mentioned to catch those who are repeat offenders.
And do what? Ban them? What do you
3 strikes. Three strike. It's three strike here in Quebec. I don't know what it is in for Tennis Canada. It's a three strike policy. If you are caught three times cheating, you are suspended. You're suspended for 3 months here in Quebec. And if you're suspended again, I think that there is a ban of, I'm not sure the time, but I think it can be up to a year that you can be banned from competitive play. There have to be consequences. But again, you have to catch somebody, and my daughter can very well write a letter to the federation and say, I was very disappointed in player ABC's behavior in my match, but unless they're witnessed by someone, it's always a case of his word against one player's word against another.
Right. I'm curious. So where you are, they enforce that three strike rule?
Yes, they do.
Because I think one of the issues that we face here in the U.S. is, as you're aware, USTA is divided up into 17 sections. Each section is governed independently of the others. There are some rules that come down from the national office, but a lot of what happens on the court is governed by local authority. And so it causes some issues when one section chooses to enforce or interpret the rules one way and another section interprets them in a different manner. And we even see that, tournament to tournament, that there are certain tournament directors that will guide the officials for their event, that a first offense warrants a warning to the player, a second offense is, a point penalty, blah, 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 down the line. But then there are others who advise their officials that there's no such thing as a warning, that, there's no free pass. At the first offense, there's a point penalty. And so it becomes very difficult for the kids themselves who may go into an event thinking, well, at the last tournament I played, I got away with the first misstep and got a warning, so I'm going to have that same leeway here. And lo and behold, they come across an official who has been advised that, nope, we don't warn here. First offense is, strike one, point penalty. And I just find it very frustrating as a parent that there's not more, continuity in how the rules are enforced. And I'm not sure what to do about it other than continuing to talk about it.
Right. In a particular tournament, we're in the same boat as you in terms of, three strikes throughout is not a suspension from a match play. It's 3 times that the federation has been advised of a particular player's behavior in a particular tournament. So they would have to have been, what we do here is you would write to the federation, in my case, Tennis Quebec, report an infraction, and it has to come from the player, not from mom and dad. The player has to write to the federation and say, in this particular tournament, blah, blah, blah. The federation, I guess, if they receive enough complaints about that particular player and have heard from the head referee of that tournament, would then invite the player in question to a meeting where they would be permitted to present their case, and if the federation felt that there was enough evidence against that player, would suspend them at that point. In a match, in a tournament match, we're in the same boat as you, but typically we're very lucky in that we're small. Canada is small, Quebec is small. We have a couple of referees, one in particular, one head referee who is usually at the big championship tournaments, provincial championship, national championships, leading the charge, and his belief is that his role is to teach the players that are on the court that these behaviors are not acceptable, and he will, provide a point reduction or a game loss to somebody who is, blatantly breaking the rules. But it's not, that way everywhere across Canada. We just have, the fortunate the fortune to have this one particular gentleman who has been around for a very long time, and all the kids know that when he is there will be no gamesmanship at that tournament. So that will be caught. There will be gamesmanship, but if it's caught, it will be punished.
Interesting. Well, one of the issues as I see it is the whole issue of gamesmanship and whether it's considered a breach of the rules. And a lot of what we've been talking about so far is not a direct violation of any rule. And that's where the issue, I think, kind of crops up.
100%. It is. These tactics are not a violation of the rules. They are gamesmanship, pure and simple, and you're absolutely right. There's nothing in the rule book that says that you can't get mixed up on the score. There's nothing in the rule book that says that you can't have seen a ball in or out or whatever it was. So I think the onus comes back on all of us involved in junior tennis to speak up, and if we feel that it's an issue, and I'm sure that there are parents out there that feel that it's not. To me, it is a huge issue. It's a frustrating issue, but I think it's our responsibility to speak up to our coaches, our children, our governing bodies, and have some kind of open discussion about what we can do. The problem with our game is it's been around so very, very, very long, and I'm sure that people who played junior tennis back in the 70s could tell you about a particular player in their section or in their whatever that was renowned for gamesmanship. So it's probably been around for a very long time. The challenge is, do we want to let it continue, or are we at a point where we have to say it's time to add more roving umpires to our junior tennis rosters?
Right. And from the tournament director's point of view, I hear that, these umpires cost money, and there's already a very small margin on these tournaments, and in fact, a lot of them, the tournament directors, wind up going in the red, and so they can't afford to hire more officials. My issue, number of officials, but rather with the training of the officials and I can't tell you how many times my son has had to say to an official, please go get the rule book and I will show you the rules.
Right.
And he's been right, and that's terrible to me that the player knows more than the person hired to enforce the rules. And it happens in real life. I get that, and I am the first one to say that tennis is a microcosm of life, and that's the beauty of our sport, and there's so many lessons to be learned, but holy cow, they're kids, and I just feel like some of what we're asking of them really doesn't belong in the sport, especially at the junior level.
Oh, I agree with you. And if that is where we're at, where our players are having to tell the referees what it says in the rule book, then we have a serious problem. And I do understand the cost factor. I haven't given it much thought, but if probably given me a little bit of time, I'd probably say, well, can't you do this? I mean, is there not a way to fund this type of training? Certainly. Junior hockey referees, of course, are paid by the leagues. Is there a way for? And you say that individual tournaments can't pay for extra officials at their events, but is there a way in the money that our federations are receiving from government or however else they're raising their money to expand on the amount of officials that we are training properly, and I think they need to be reviewed. I think you should have to write an exam every, couple of years to make sure that you're up to date on the rules and you know what's what. My feeling is, because I'm so frustrated, Lisa, I wrote to you on your Facebook page about this issue specifically because my blood pressure is through the roof. My daughter's near the end of her junior career, and will she go on to college? We certainly hope so. But I'm at the point where when I know my daughter is playing certain players, my blood pressure goes up before we've even gotten to the tournament, and that's not, and my daughter as well too. We try to keep the draw away from her if we know she's playing, players that are kind of known for these types of gamesmanship on in match play. So there's a big question. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
That's a really interesting point to all of this, which is the effect that it has on the kid who has to play and I'm using the word cheater to encompass the gamesmanship tactics as well. So I hope those of you listening understand that. But the child who has to play the known cheater, the anxiety that comes with that, it's ridiculous. And I see it with my son too, and not so much now that he's 18. He's learned how to manage it a little bit better, but there's still certain players that he sees their name in his half of the draw, and he just, it's anxiety time before he's even gotten to the court.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that, and then the question has to be, is that part of the game? One thing that I love about tennis, and that my daughter plays tennis, is that it is an individual sport, that she does have to learn how to manage her stress, that she does have to learn how to, as she told her classmates, she's in a special sports study high school where they go to school, till noon every day, and then all the athletes leave to go train at their particular sports. And she goes to school with a lot of hockey players, obviously. And she said to them, listen, guys, it's only me out there. If things are going bad, I can't get off the ice. There's no way for me to go and sit down. It's all about me. But the point is that while it's great to be character building through a sport like tennis, when your child is having that kind of anxiety because they know that somebody's in their half of the draw or they're facing them first round, that's not good, healthy stress. That's stress that's coming from a source that I think as parents, coaches, and federations we have a responsibility to eliminate, And I'm sure that, number 180 in the world facing number 4 in the world feels a level of anxiety, and I'm not suggesting that that's not a good thing, but when you know that somebody there's a good possibility that at some point in your match against the player you are facing is going to try to switch something, you're probably more focused on when that is going to come than actually just, playing the best tennis that you can play in that particular moment.
Absolutely. And, I've watched that happen. But, I will say that, we continually hear our kids are soft. Our kids are soft. They don't know how to handle pressure. That's the problem. And so I suspect there will be people listening to this conversation that will say, can it? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why are y'all even talking about this? These kids need to learn how to handle these situations. It's only going to make them stronger human beings in the process. And I like what you said, that there is a kind of stress being whatever number you use, 180 playing number 4, that is the kind of stress that comes with fighting your way up a ladder versus the kind of stress that is something bad is likely to happen during the next 2 hours that is 100% outside my control. When is it going to happen? I have no idea. How am I going to respond to it? How is it going to impact me? And how do I put that aside and just play tennis? I mean,
exactly.
So
and I think I think that's our responsibility to take a look at that. And you can say that, North American players are soft, but I think that is something that is outside the kind of demand that we want to put on our young tennis players. And if I had one appeal, I would be to Tennis Canada, to the USTA, to the other federations, people that might be listening at other federations across the world, that the parents of players in there seriously take a look. And if they feel that it is an issue, then I think the onus is on us, or to encourage our children. If they're, my daughter's 16, she can certainly start to speak for herself to the governing body, to bring it up and and to ask, why can't we find a way to have more, roving umpires? Why is there not a way in all the government money that you might be receiving for the Federation that you cannot, take a little bit out of your marketing budget and put a little bit more into making sure that the officials at our events, there are enough of them, and that they are well trained enough to be able to intervene and know the rules and keep track of the score almost. I mean, I don't know what it is for you, but at this stage, the biggest gamesmanship that I'm seeing happening is the score switch. All of a sudden, nobody remembers the score. Well, the player usually who's leading will probably remember the score. The player usually who is going to play a game is usually behind, either in games or in points in that particular game, and it's usually very close to a break point, an add out or an add in the match. It's why can't we have somebody there who can just keep track of those types of things? Now, is that soft? I don't know, but I stand by it today anyway.
We have another caller on the air. I'm going to just see if they have a question. It's a caller from 214-684. Did you have a question for us?
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, well, first I want to say thank you for such a terrific show and for doing all that you do to bring such important issues to the public. So thank you for all that you're doing to improve junior tennis, and this is a great show as an example. I think in terms of dealing with cheating, I think an all of the above strategy is probably wise. So I think all of the ideas that you guys have been kicking around are probably worth exploring. Just when I was listening on the phone waiting to come in, I was thinking that there are an awful lot of adults sort of standing around at junior tennis tournaments, adults and coaches and, club members and people. And I just wonder if there's a better way to use some of those people as roving umpires or as scorekeepers. As you were just saying, a lot of this involves cheating with the score, and I think we could probably rethink how we put to use a lot of these adults that are standing around watching tennis. Some of them are not disinterested, of course, so you wouldn't want to have the wrong pairing on the court, but I think there are a lot of adults that would be perfectly happy to go out there and at least get the kids started, maybe keep score, and at least be an adult presence on the court. I think just having an adult around is probably going to make a player think twice about making a bad call. The other idea I had, though, was that as frustrating as cheating is, and I think it's terrible, I do think it's a unique aspect of tennis, and I think that players need to be taught that from an early age, that what they're getting into is a really unique experience where they're both a competitor and a referee at the same time, and that's a huge amount of responsibility to put on the shoulders of an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 16-year-old, and I think that's a great learning opportunity for young kids, even though it's really, really frustrating when they're the victim of gamesmanship or cheating. I think it's a great learning opportunity for students and for kids. And I think at the end of the day, I know of very few students, I know of very few players who were denied a college scholarship or a pro career or, any other sort of goal because of cheating. They may have lost a match or a set, they may have had a crummy day because of it, and that's terrible. But I think in the long run, the best players win out. And that's something I think that maybe gives me a little bit of satisfaction that at the end of the day, no one's tennis career, I don't think, is hindered by cheating, although it's terribly frustrating in the moment. So those are just my thoughts.
Great. Tell me, what's your name?
Scott.
Scott, thank you for calling in, Scott. Are you a parent or a coach or both?
All of the above.
Because I think those are great ideas, and Nicole, what do you think of the whole idea of using the adults as scorekeepers on the court?
I love it. I think that you're absolutely right, Scott. There are a lot of parents sitting around, and just to have them as scorekeepers, not in any kind of position to perhaps rule on a line call or whatever, but scorekeepers would be a huge boon to it. And you're right. I think that the sport that our kids are entering is very demanding, and they are competitor and referee, and that the best players always end up winning out, and they'll get the college scholarships, etc. And when I think about it, my daughter, who will have come off a match where somebody has messed around with her, I will be livid for, 48 hours, and she's let it go after, she's stomped off the court, and then she's gone and had a drink of water and had her shower, et cetera, and she's fine for the rest of the day. I'm fuming about it, so I think that our kids are often a lot stronger than we think they are, and those who end up going far in this game, in their junior career anyway, have learned how to manage the stress of competitor referee in terms of being able to let it go and move on to the next match. As a parent, I'm in a completely different boat in that situation.
I love that idea. I just had a nano thought just listening to you, again, thinking about the structuring of tennis tournaments and roving umpires. I wonder if there's a way, assuming that there are score, markers on the courts, I wonder if referees could walk around and give warnings or point penalties if kids were not keeping score. In other words, if my score, at least the game score, now within the points in a game, I suppose that would be difficult. But I just wonder if there are ways to really incentivize players.
That just happened here in Quebec at the Quebec Junior 16 under championships. The referee told the girls on the court, keep the score out loud. They were not. The player who did not keep it was given a game point, was penalized a point. So if that could be instigated more, because if they called the score out, the unfortunate part is that we as parents might have heard somebody say 40-30, and then they're all looking towards you, and you're not able to say anything because you're not allowed to intervene in the game at all. But that would be great if there were more point penalized for not keeping the score. But I love the idea of having just a scorekeeper a volunteer, parent on the court keeping the score.
You could. I mean, this is maybe getting really in the weeds, but I have to call 40-30, and the returner has to affirm that. Yes, 40-30 or something. I mean, this is kind of awkward, but I don't know. But some sort of affirmation that yes, it's 40-30. I don't like the way that feels, but it would just be one way to encourage that. But just one final point, and then I'll get off. But I love the positive incentive, obviously, more than the negative incentive of point penalties and that sort of thing. And I love having the kids on earlier talking about the website and the positive peer pressure to encourage sportsmanship. And I to the extent that can be encouraged or disseminated, I think that's terrific. And maybe having tournament directors really elevate the sportsmanship award and having players, vote on that every tournament, really elevate that, and getting a bigger trophy, get the biggest trophy for the sportsmanship award, not for winning the tournament. I don't know. I think there are some ways to create positive peer pressure for good sportsmanship. So anyway, well, thank you for a terrific show.
Thanks for calling in, Scott. I really appreciate your input there, and I love his idea of having the on-court scorekeeper. I think that's an easy, free suggestion that certainly. And
regardless of how you feel about either player on either end, you can certainly keep the score. That it's not about making a judgment call on whether a ball was in or out, but just to keep the score would be terrific. Now, I'm sure somebody will say, that's all part of the game. We have to have the kids keeping the score. But I think we need to address the issue that we do have a problem with gamesmanship and cheating, and find collective solutions as parents, coaches, and players especially. I love this PAC website to limit it or to make, like the two kids who spoke to us earlier were saying, putting positive peer pressure that it's not okay to do these things.
It's interesting. I'll share a quick story. My son there's one particular player that he has played numerous times, and there's usually an issue when they play each other on the court. And so the first time my son played this other boy, he had heard stories about things that went on in this kid's matches, and so my son decided that he was going to be proactive, and he was going to hang out with this kid a ton before their match. He was going to seek them out at the tournament site, make sure they were sitting together for lunch, and arrange to warm up with them before they had to meet each other in the tournament, and all of that, because he said, Mom, he's going to have a hard time cheating me if we're friends. And I thought that was a really interesting approach. This was many years ago. And it worked in that one particular match. I'm sorry to say it didn't work in subsequent attempts, but that goes to the whole positive peer pressure aspect of this, and putting the onus on our kids to form relationships with everybody out there, because it's much more difficult to cheat a friend, to pull those tactics against somebody that you're going to be hanging out with at the hotel later that day or whatever. And so I guess that's one approach that we as parents can encourage. I want to also read something from Frank Giampaolo. I was hoping Frank would have a chance to call into the show today, but he did warn me that he was traveling today. So one thing that he wrote, and Nicole, I know you've read this, but I'm going to share it here. He wrote, "My recommendation to the USTA is to have each section hire a half dozen new referees. These individuals are unknown to the tennis public. They attend USTA events but dress in plain clothes, essentially working as an undercover officer. They don't ever associate with tournament director or referees or linesmen in public view. As they work the tournament sites and witness unsportsmanlike conduct, cheating on line calls, flipping the score, etc., they simply write it down without ever confronting the player or the parent. The more severe the gamesmanship, the more severe the punishment. A few days later, an email comes to the parent stating that the child was witnessed by the official conducting themselves in an unsportsmanlike way. A simple 3-strike policy is in effect for the child/family. Examples may include: first strike, the child gets a warning. Second strike, the athlete gets a 1-month ban from playing in any sanctioned event. After the third strike, they receive a 6-month ban from playing in any sanctioned event. Because a cheater now doesn't know if they're being observed by an official, and there are actual ramifications if they witness cheating, this action may not stop cheating entirely, but surely it will slow down the unsportsmanlike efforts." What do you think?
Yeah, I read that, and Frank posted that, and I thought it was a really fascinating idea. I guess what I would prefer is that we were able to be a little bit more open about dealing with this. The idea, I guess that you have to be able to defend yourself. I think if you I can't talk now. I think each child would have to have the opportunity to defend their behavior. If it's just arbitrary, I like it in many ways, but there's a part of me that's going, but what about this? I'm not sure what exactly this is. I just have a small reservation, but I thought it was a great idea, especially coming from someone so renowned and influential in tennis as Frank Giampaolo. There's a lot of good in it, but I have a little bit part of me that just feels that that's kind of like, I don't want our kids to have to be spied on to act properly on the tennis court.
Hey, I mean, I agree with you. It feels a little brotherish to me too. The fact that it is, kind of a secret spying type situation. But I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution is at this point. I share your frustration. I've witnessed it so many times, but I thought it was really interesting what you said earlier, that when your daughter has been in matches where these types of gamesmanship or cheating have occurred, that she's able to let it go pretty quickly after the match, but you as the parent are the one left seething over it, and it's exactly the same. It's usually me, and my son has now gotten to a point where he says, "Mom, it's over, let it go." So who's grown here?
Exactly, and the end of the goal is they are growing a lot quicker than us in these situations. That's for sure. I mean, my daughter, when I told her I was going to do this discussion with you today, she thought it's a really important topic to be discussed, but at the end of the day, she just wants to go out and play tennis matches, and she hopes she doesn't run into these types of things very often. She's working more on a mental program to be able to just focus on the things that she can control, and the things out of her control are out of her control,
Right. And so then that leads credence to our governing bodies when they say, these are great lessons for our kids to learn, which I hesitate to give credence to that because I don't want my kid having to learn that lesson in sport.
I'm with you. I don't think that they need to learn that lesson in sport. I think that we should do everything that we can to eliminate it. And having, only been introduced to tennis through my husband, who is a coach, and having, written sports for a living for many years, mostly stick and ball sports, I was aghast to find out that there were no referees on tennis courts, junior tennis overseeing junior tennis matches, and I still believe that there is a way to bring young kids who are interested in tennis but don't want to be players, to bring them up through a ladder system, to have them as roving umpires at tennis matches, and to find a way to pay them. But on the other hand, what Scott said earlier about finding a way to at least have scorekeepers on the court is a good start. Could be a good start to stopping one part of the gamesmanship that we're seeing out there.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. Sadly, we are out of time here, but I would love to continue this conversation, and I encourage those listening, if you have more thoughts to share, please do so on our Facebook page or via Twitter, and or via email if you want to keep it private between just us. And let's keep the conversation going and try and effect some positive change so that our kids do have a fair chance to compete when they step foot on the court. So thank you all for listening. Nicole, thank you for joining us today. And I really look forward to seeing where your daughter winds up. And I follow her progress pretty closely, and I can't thank you enough for encouraging me to pursue this whole idea of Parenting Aces, and I think we've all benefited from what you started a long time ago with the Tennis Mom. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Lisa. Keep up the great work. You are playing such an important role for us tennis parents out there, and continued success in all that you're doing.
Thanks. My listeners, thank you so much. Don't forget, no show next Tuesday, but stay tuned for updates as when our next broadcast will be. Have a great week, everybody.